Hello, everyone. Welcome to another series of the Entrepreneur's Dilemma. Here with a good friend of mine, Kareem Mostafa. And Kareem Mostafa is the CEO of Tribetactics. And I've known him for a couple of years now, and he's an amazing guy. And thank you so much, Kareem, for taking the time to be here. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Toby, for having me, man. I was really looking forward to having a chat with you. It's always good to catch up.
Sweet. Usually we'd catch up over food or something like that, but now it's a bit official.
Yeah. Usually there's some chicken involved. Yeah. or a trip somewhere around Europe.
Or a trip somewhere around Europe. Let's not give too much away anyways. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate your time. Guys, just a background on how I know this guy. We were boxing together, was it? We went to the same boxing club together and we were sparring against each other. And I was looking at this guy's energy as he jabs, and he was acting like he had some fire inside him when he jabs. So I was like, I need to know who this guy. I think that was about 4 years ago, if not more. Is it?
Yeah, man. Oh, you're making me feel bad now, man. We need to go back. We need to get back to that, man. You and me mainly.
Yeah. Well, bro, welcome to the show. Quickly, I just want you to take the floor and just talk about yourself, your company, and what you do.
Yeah, for sure. So first of all, you and I go back like a good few years, so it's always good to be chatting again. I don't think any of our conversations were recorded, so this is definitely great. But yeah, man, I'd like to tell you about myself. So my name is Kareem Mostafa. I'm from Egypt. I'm living in Dublin, Ireland here, a couple of minutes away from you.
And, not too far away, actually.
Yeah, and basically, I got my start doing a startup which failed beautifully. Like, it was, when something fails so much that you can't help but smile, because it's absolutely ridiculous and unbelievable, the level of failure. So that's how I got my start into the world, and then I decided to get a real job. So I ended up working in the corporate world for a couple of years. But I kept thinking about that original experiment, and whether if that would have worked, that would have been really cool. Maybe a different idea, but just the concept of doing something entrepreneurial and all that stuff. So yeah, fast forward to today, me and my brother, who is also my co-founder, Emin, both of us, we've set up Tribetactics, and yeah, we've been running for about 2 years so far.
Nice. I remember when we were having this conversation. Then you were still at your corporate job, and you kept saying that you wanted to start something. I want you to just. I remember you were very serious about it, and you were one person that had this idea that wouldn't get away from your mind. I know you started a couple of businesses. I remember the one of the boat side. Do you remember boat side?
Yeah. Boat side.
I remember boat side. Boat side was an amazing idea, actually.
It was,
and just so you guys know what boat side was. Boat side, it was kind of a luxury retreat on the boats, wasn't it?
Yeah. The idea was to do. It's so funny, man, because speaking of boat side, it was. Basically, I was like, you know what, I was just thinking in the future, what would I like to have? And for some reason I came up with the idea of buying a boat. I really want to buy a boat one day. Later on I found out that's not a very smart idea. You're much better off just renting it out, because it depreciates very quickly. But anyways, I was like, okay, well, what do I need to do with my life to be able to be the kind of person who can justify buying a boat and still being able to pay mortgage or rent or whatever after, and everything else. And I just kept thinking, I was like, be clever. If we actually do something relating to boats, and ironically the business around boats, that actually ends up funding us buying a boat. So that's where we're like, okay, boats, what can we do around boats? It was just almost as a challenge. It wasn't based on any market, data research, none of that. It was just can we challenge ourselves to come up with something relating to boats? And it was very, very tough, but we ended up coming up with this idea of think of it kind of like an Airbnb, but for boats. So basically using boats as an alternate networking venue.
I remember now.
Something that's a lot more intimate. So you're not in an expo with thousands of people. You could just be with super curated, maximum, let's say 15 people on a catamaran or something like that. And it's you build quality networks. Obviously the way you got introduced was very memorable. You were like on a freaking boat, all that stuff. And the boat goes around for a couple of hours, so you have enough time to build, a good relationship and
I
have a
like
bit of
that.
fun as well.
I like that.
But ultimately, like, we realized that I don't think we were in the right people to do it, or at least we were not in the right place to do it. Because when we were thinking of boats, we were thinking of, okay, sunny weather, warm weather, people are actually willing to go, sailing, stuff like that, especially people who are not sailors. And here in Ireland, like, you have some of the most like well-trained sailors, just because the sea here is pretty rough. And if you learn how to sail here, you can pretty much sail anywhere. However, if someone is just there for a networking event, they're not ready to go to get like splashed and all this stuff. So we realized it's not really the right place, in my opinion, for it. So we scrapped it, unfortunately. We might go back to it in the future. Let's see.
I really like the idea. I just want to ask now, like, this idea of entrepreneurship, is this something that stems deep in the family? Is this something that maybe your dad was an entrepreneur and then you just wanted to become an entrepreneur? Where did this burning desire to become an entrepreneur stem from?
Man, I've never been asked that question before. That's I've actually never even thought about that before. If anything, Toby, I think like it was the opposite. I think my family is like purposely against entrepreneurship. And the reason why is because my dad, like, he works in the public sector, basically. My mom is a stay-at-home mom, but she writes like books. But yeah, she wouldn't like be she's a stay-at-home mom, essentially. And then my grandfather, he couldn't finish school because he had to support his family. Like, he left when he was, I think, in primary school or something like that, the only boy among like many sisters. Long story short, he ended up working in a ceramic factory in Egypt, where I'm from. And fast forward, he got to a stage where he can own his own little ceramic workshop, like ceramic tiles, like a workshop of that. And this was as far as entrepreneurship went. And unfortunately, he passed away prematurely. And with like a lot of like debt and stuff like that. And basically it gave my family like such a bad taste of what entrepreneurship is. Entrepreneurship is getting into debt and like taking insane risk. Like, what's wrong with just keeping a regular job? The ending of that story is, thankfully he was such a well-liked person. That thankfully people like forgave his debts and stuff like that. But nevertheless, right, like, it was this notion of like, anything but entrepreneurship, because we have firsthand experience of how this failed,
Okay, so talk to me about this now. Like, when you are making that transition from corporate to entrepreneurship, like, definitely you were getting resistance from family.
Yeah, man, 100%. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. To tell you the truth, I had to. I'm trying to think of the specific order of events. I think I handed in my notice.
Specific order of events.
Yeah, I handed in my notice, and then I informed them of my decision.
Okay.
But I insisted that I have their blessings for it, because in Egypt and a lot of other like African cultures, and actually a lot of cultures in the world, like, you're not like fully independent. Like, you do want to get your family's like,
lesson. I know that. I know the feeling. Yeah.
It goes a long way in Egypt. So I was like, yo, I'm doing it, but I need you guys to be on board with this. And I managed to convince them.
and on that day how long did it take you to battle the idea of handling your notice? What was that night before you went to work to handle your notice like?
Yeah, I think, to be honest with you, I was just super excited about it. I was like impatient, to the point of like just being impatient, because I had so many like false starts before, or false starts, where like I would think about it, I'd pull the trigger, and then I'd get cold feet, pull the trigger, and then go to cold feet. And I guess like when you have enough time goes by and the situation doesn't really change, you're like, you know what, like, if I don't get on with this, time is passing by. And generally, like, I can't speak for all ages, because I haven't been all ages, but I like to think, at least theoretically, that there's never a bad time to start, or it's always a good time to start, considering your circumstances. You just have to take the right steps and what that means for you. But in my case, my argument to myself was, hey, like, you're not getting any younger. Like, the younger you start, the better. Even if you're 60 years old, it's better you start at 60 than 61 if you do have a compelling vision and a plan. Or even if you're 70, maybe you have an idea.
Yeah.
And you and I probably know a lot of like famous like stories, almost cliche stories at this stage, where people only blew up when they became like a lot older. Like
Older, yeah.
One of your and mine favorite restaurants is KFC, and
I was waiting for you to say that.
yeah, Colonel Sanders, like
Yeah.
he tried a bunch of stuff and it didn't work, and then it really blew up when he started that restaurant chain, and then the rest is history.
And just for like the viewers now listening, when you decided to hand in your notice, what are like the, how do I say, protective steps you took, especially financially? Were you saving for a while? Did you have your business already going and then you just made that smooth transition, or did you wait for your business to be able to give you money that was enough to sustain you, like without your corporate job?
Yeah, perfect. So, and even to take it a step back before that, the very first person I had to speak to was with my wife, just to get her blessings before anything else, because this is like a family situation. Like before anything else, I had to make sure that she's on board. And once I got her blessings, I was like, okay, now let me look at my situation. So I did have some savings, nothing crazy, but I did have like savings for like a couple of months, and I told myself, what, the safest thing to do would be to get started on the business and then do it kind of like part-time, and then see it grow and then make the shift completely. So some type of like multitasking. I tried it and I failed, and then I quit my job because I was
tried it and you failed.
Yeah, I couldn't do both at the same time. I couldn't, because my job was extremely demanding, just like most jobs.
Yeah.
And like mentally demanding, like by 6:30 or whatever, you're like, right, time to grab a quick bite and go to this other thing, and you're like, you can't even focus, like you cannot truthfully focus on it. So for me, even though I didn't have, and I was reading up a lot about this, about the exact question that you're talking about, like just Googling it, like, hey, how much should you have saved, before you quit, or what should you do exactly, or should you already be making money from that thing before you quit? Everybody in one way, shape, or form basically said there's never going to be a perfect time. It's the same for a lot of things. People say there's never a perfect time to buy a house, there's never a perfect time to start a business, raise a family, whatever. Like it's one of those like life, it really is a life event where you're like, you just have to jump on it and then figure out your way from there.
I agree.
And yeah, like for me, ideally I would have loved to do it part-time before going in like full steam ahead, but just being self-aware, like I know that I would suck at that, and that I've failed before in that, and that I can only do one thing at a time, because I'm a simple person. So I was like, you know what, let me just jump fully into that. Best case scenario, or rather, let me start with the worst case scenario. Worst case scenario, I could just go back and get another job. And I kept thinking of, because I was friends with recruiters and stuff like that, and sometimes I'd just ask them, or I'd overhear that many times people would take like a career break and then go traveling to Thailand or whatever for like 6 months, and then they go and apply for a job. And when they ask them, hey, your CV is blank for 6 months, what were you doing? And they say, oh, I was just traveling. They're like, oh, okay, that's fine. And I realized that if someone is quote unquote doing nothing, I don't mean it like that, but let's say doing nothing or just traveling, even that is acceptable. So if I come back, let's say after 6 months, and say, you know what, I tried this business and it failed, and this was my experience, but here's what I learned, blah, blah, blah. I thought that, you know what, this could be at least on par with someone who went on like a 6-month trip.
Yeah.
And that's what made me pull the trigger, that like I thought about the worst case scenario, and I realized I could live with it. And that's what made me make the jump, if that makes sense.
That makes total sense, Kareem. I mean, like, it's like, for me personally, it's always better to do it the safe way. That's the way I think. And the safe way is what you didn't do. You literally just bite the bullet and just quit, and then learn to float in the sea, I suppose.
Which I don't recommend, by the way.
Oh, you don't recommend?
I don't recommend.
Why don't you recommend that? What would you do differently now?
I wouldn't do anything differently. I would recommend this specific extreme approach for myself, and for other
for yourself
people
alone.
No, but also for what I'm trying to say is that this is the difficult way to do it. A much easier way to do it would be exactly what you're saying, which is to play it a bit more safe, And by the way, a lot of companies also started like this. Like I was reading the other day that I think Bill Gates, after he started Microsoft, he's like, yeah, that's not going to work. He went back to school and then he's like, actually, no, let me just go and do this full time.
Okay.
Warby Parker, who are a famous e-commerce brand for buying like glasses and stuff like that, eyeglasses. If I'm not mistaken, they all had like backup plans and like backup jobs after college in case the business doesn't work. So it's always good to have a contingency plan. And Adam Grant, who's a famous author, he wrote a book called Originals, and he talks about how entrepreneurs, like you, like me, like other people, they're actually the most risk-averse people. We hate risk, you know. Because you're already jumping into something super risky. It's risky enough as it is. So you end up being the most like safe person in your decisions, as opposed to maybe a different situation where you're always going to have a net. You know, you don't have a net. Like you're the one who's responsible for getting a paycheck for you and for your team members. You know, you either make payroll or you don't. You know,
exactly.
Yeah.
Cool, man. I mean, you've actually you've actually dropped a lot of knowledge there, and it's actually educated me on a lot of things. Because for me, I currently still have my 9 to 5 job that I do, and I still do my entrepreneurship business. You know, but I also have that. I also get in those situations where my 9 to 5 job really takes a lot of mental energy from me, and it's so hard for me to give, you know, enough energy to my other business, you know. So I suppose now the trade-off would be that I would have to be working side by side for a longer period of time and be able to manage my time, maybe be able to manage my energy and focus between these two things, you know. And I suppose for me now, the challenge I'm facing is that it's taking me longer to start up my business, you know, because I have to also put in work on my other job. Whereas if I like did the what you've done, whereas you then just jumped onto your own business, you give that full focus because you know that is your bread and butter.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. And just to add to what you're saying too, because it's really important to clarify it as well. Is, you know, I've tried what you are talking about. To me, it makes total sense, and that's why I tried it. I speak for myself. Like I was not able to pull it off because I realized I came to the same conclusion as you, which is like, like it's either one or the other.
Yeah.
You know, a good, you know, and again, this is, you know, like it's for some people, you really do need to make that jump to be fully focused and to really find out, right? Some people say, you know, the most important thing is to not live with regrets, you know, like to just jump in, because otherwise you would have never known if it would have worked or not.
Exactly.
And by the way, guaranteed it's not going to work at the start. That's just the way it is. That's like going into a dark room. Let's say someone played a game. Let's say it's a game, and like you go into this dark room and you have to find like a mug, for example, in the dark room, and you have to get it right from the first time, pinpoint where you think that mug might be. It's such a like ridiculous thing. And to be honest with you, I think that's what business is, because people say, you know, again, I speak for myself, like we go and saying, yeah, this is definitely going to work, like common sense. And it turns out that, yes, there's some general interest in that area, but then a whole array of like problems arise. Number one, maybe it's been done a million times before. Maybe it's been done better than you're ever going to be able to do it. So don't even start, bro. Okay. The third thing is, you know what? They kind of want that, but not exactly the way you said it. So there's always going to be some form of iteration or pivoting. So yeah, I suppose like if you can just live with this mental, I suppose like it takes some, but like if you can build up this like mental, if anyone can just build up this like mental toughness, I'm personally still struggling with it, but I'm better than last year for sure. Like when you figure out this mental toughness piece and realize that, you know what, you just have to, this is the game you play. The same way that when you're in a corporate job, the game is, okay, how do I like overexceed my targets or overexceed my performance so I can get promoted? It's the same exact thing. Except this game, in my biased opinion, and I know you'll agree, the upside for it is way, way, way higher, because you don't just keep your job, you create jobs.
Exactly.
And you pick whatever job you want for yourself as well.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Exactly. Wow. Beautiful, Kareem. Well said. My next question for you would just be around, and I know you've touched slightly on this, but just around the challenges that you faced when you first started your business? If you can just think of 3 challenges that you faced when you first started, like when you just jumped in and just started pushing your business forward.
Only 3? Man, you and I can write a book. We'll get to like 300 easily.
Just
easily.
For the purpose of time.
But for the purpose of time, let's
just
say.
For the purpose of time.
Okay, cool. In no particular order, I think the first one is actually one, man, that I've learned very, very recently, extremely recently. It comes from a book by a guy called Dan Sullivan. He's one of like the best like business coaches out there. To even apply to his program, you have to have 250K net worth. I just closed the window. I'm like, I can't even. I'm not even going to go there. However, the next best thing is he sells books. So one of the books that I bought that he made is about a powerful concept called Who, Not How.
Who, not how?
Who, not how. Yeah.
Okay.
And so basically it talks about how people like you and I, we get an idea, we're ambitious, whatever, like we want to do it. So we always come up with what we want to do, and then we figure out, okay, how do we do it? We go on Google, YouTube, ask people, study. And he says this is a very limiting belief, because you cannot learn how to do everything in the world, and you definitely cannot learn how to do everything inside a business. Rather, a much more productive question is who could do this, as opposed to how to do something. So this is one of my biggest learnings many times, because one of my personality traits is that I'm very impatient. Sometimes, I'd be like, you know what, by the time I teach someone how to do this, like I could just go get it done myself. Let me just go get it done, which is fine. I got it done. But now anytime I want to do it again, I have to do it myself, because no one else learned how to do it. And better yet, I did not, I prevented myself from getting access to people who've been there, done that 10 times better than me. I could have just hired them or contracted them or worked with them, leverage their years of knowledge, save myself 10 years and just get them in. So that's what I'm learning right now, which is one of the biggest challenges, was to mentally shift yourself from how to asking who instead. And man, like as soon as we figured that out, we realized that we could just work with as many people as we wanted to, who are much smarter than us, and we don't need to micromanage, and we shouldn't micromanage, and we shouldn't think of the how. We should always think of the end goal, and let the who's, let them take care of that.
Interesting. Nice. I like that.
Yeah. And then the other 2 real quick is just time management, because when you're working in someone else's company, time management is easy. Like, your boss gave you a deadline, all your teammates are presenting, there's targets to hit, all that stuff. But when you're running your own thing, you have to do that for yourself, and it could be a challenge sometimes, because you're like, okay, I'm going to set myself a deadline for end of this month. And then you're like, who am I kidding? It's just me here. Wait a minute. It's not a real deadline. I'm being super honest, So how do you, and this is the sign of an amateur, like I was, but the way when we shifted to become a lot more professional, what we realized is, what, if we don't hit these deadlines, certain people's lives are going to be affected. Some people, we may not hit, including your own life, like some goals may not be hit. Some people may not be able to get paid as much as we could have paid them, so on and so forth. We can't grow as much as we could. So you have to find these internal motivations. We'll go bankrupt. Like you have to find a deep why that will make sure that you are your worst boss. I mean that in a positive way. Like
in a positive way. I get that. Yeah.
That you hold yourself as like super accountable, more than any external person would hold you accountable. Having said that, you can also have like accountability buddies, where it's like just you and a friend. It could be 2 people who are running different businesses, or it could be 2 people who just, will give it to each other straight. For example, you and me, like I can tell you, Toby, like these are my 3 priorities for this week. I just need to make sure that I get these 3 things done. And next week, I want you to ask me if I did these things, yes or no, and don't accept any excuses from me. And then next week I come to you and I say, hey, Toby, so I finished the 2 things, but the third thing's, look, man, I got sick, and I had to do this thing and blah, 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 blah. Seemingly reasonable excuses. You as my accountability buddy should not accept none of that. None of that. Otherwise this is not the game for you. The entrepreneurship is not for that person in that case. So that's the second thing, like holding yourself accountable and time management. And yeah, the third thing in terms of challenge was just around learning to to view rejection objectively and positively, learning to see it as like research, almost hidden research, and as well as like just making sure that you can actually learn from it. Not like, you know what, they said no, you know what, screw these guys, you know, I don't even care. They're not even, you know, they don't have money anyway, you know, like it's more like, no, like how could you be objective? How could you listen to the market? And how could you allow the market to teach you something and not be so stubborn about your view of things? Like be open to what you could actually learn from other from the rejection, because rejection is extremely it's extremely like deflating, you know, like you're like, but this is my business, you're saying no to the business, saying no to me, that means I'm not worth, like you go through that down this whole like rabbit hole of useless like thoughts. And so right now we're starting to we've started to like value like rejection a lot more, because it could have been a maybe, and maybes are terrible. Like yeses are great and those are great because we get definite answers that we can see, okay, they said yes, why did they say yes, how can we find more people who said yes? Or they said no, okay, and actually a lot of other people similar to them said no. Should we keep going after these people? Do they really have a point that of something that we can change? So on and so forth. Yeah.
Wow. I like the way how you've identified the problems and you also talked about the solutions you implemented. That is really powerful.
Yeah, man.
Especially with the accountability partner. Is that something that you currently do? Do you do that with other people that are not necessarily in your company?
Yeah, so I do that with a good friend of mine that I run the Mindset Kitchen podcast with.
Okay.
So he runs one type of business, I run a totally different type of business. And sometimes we hold each other. It's ironic that I say sometimes we hold each other accountable. We still need to come up with new things to hold each other accountable to. But we had a good streak going where he would tell me, Kareem, I'm trying to get these 3 things done. Now tell him, hey, like I want to get these 3 things done, and that's it, no excuses. And one time he gave me an excuse and I didn't accept it. You know,
I like that. I really do like that. I think that's really, really powerful. And I think what's even more powerful is that you don't even look inside your company to find someone that you hold accountable to. It's someone external. Now, when picking someone now, because I remember I was talking about accountability partners on a different video, but is there a certain type of person you pick to be an accountability partner, or is it just any random? Could it be your sister or your cousin or something like that?
That's a great question. Yeah, so so the short answer is it could be anyone, but the main thing that I learned is that it has to be somebody that cares for you enough that they are not willing to make any concessions or excuses for you. For example, I cannot go to my dad or mom as an accountability partner, even though they care for me greatly, but like, because my mom will be like, you know what, hey, you tried, you know, it's all good. That's my mom's personality. Or like my dad will be like, my dad will be the opposite. He'll be like, you know what, screw these guys, like, you know, they're not even worth it. Again, another form of care, but both of them like didn't help me at the end. I can also go to my brother, who's my co-founder, but like we just have so many other things that we talk about that this is an additional thing that none of us have capacity for. But if we go to someone external, bipartisan, or sometimes like he will understand maybe that I have some valid excuses or maybe not. Basically, like when you find someone external, it's kind of like not a stranger, but he or she will give you the stranger treatment. Like you know, look, I care about you, but for me, it's a black and white. Is it a yes or is it a no? It's a simple.
I like that.
Their job is actually very simple. To record yes or no in a Google Sheet, Google Doc, whatever you guys want to do, week on week. It's as simple as that, you know, and with, you know, no excuses whatsoever. Even if someone is sick, like, you know, like or genuinely was not available, maybe so, and that's fine. But as far as I'm concerned, it was a no for this week. That's it.
I like that. I really do. All right, that brings me to my next question. And I mean, Kareem, that is really helpful, even for me now. I've really learned so much from that. I didn't know you could actually go, because for me, I would just literally go to, it would be anyone I respect, actually, when I'm looking for an accountability partner. It would just be anyone I respect. But now, what you're saying is that I can go to people that, you know, that don't necessarily know what I do, that are probably business owners and probably understand the importance of what I'm trying to do, and then they can hold me accountable. I like that.
Yeah, man, 100%.
How has your lifestyle changed, now that you're an entrepreneur and before? I know it's changed. Has it changed dramatically?
Dramatically, man. Yeah.
No?
It has changed dramatically. Absolutely.
So what are the habits? Like, let's start with probably habits. Like, what are the habits that you had to lose and the habits that you had to gain?
Man, I'll go even more hardcore than that because I really want the viewers to understand, and we'll go to that as well. But man, just to let you know, like I was getting like X amount of salary working in corporate. When I quit my job, I went from X to 0, okay, and then into the negative. And where I am right now, 2 years and a little bit later, is less than half of what I used to make two and a little bit years ago. Okay. Do you really want it? Like I keep asking myself, like, do you really want it? You sure? Because I'll show you. So this is not by my choice. Like we have people to pay as well. Like we have products to build. We have stuff that we experiments to try, and inevitably, statistically, like a bunch of them are going to fail. So do you really want this? Like so it's pretty. So naturally, this means that we had to keep like our expenses in check. You know what I mean? Like again, when you're in the corporate world, I'm not saying this is always the case, but more often than not, it's chilling. Like you could just do whatever you want to an extent, of course. You're like, you know what? Look, I just need to do my job. Things are gonna be good. Next month, I get my paycheck. Will be good. From time to time, I get a bonus. Happy days. When you're by yourself, there's no one giving out bonuses. At least at the early stage that we were at. So just keeping it like honest with you, like financially, that's where it starts, and then from there, of course, it had an effect on everything. It's all about, but it also had an effect on like my mindset, or our mindset. Like you learn to value things differently. You learn to you know what I mean. Like you really start to think about things differently. Like you know what, maybe like you're like, you know what, you need to be like at the top of your game mentally. Let's start to eat more healthy. It just so happens that healthy food is a lot cheaper than getting Pizza Hut every week or whatever it is,
I
It's
know
like,
you like your food, man. I know you like your takeaways.
Oh man, you know what? Like we're gonna do something food related, you and I, at one point, I'm sure, and we'll refer to this episode when we. But yeah, like, yeah, no, 100%. My food is a huge thing for me. You're saying, like you can't go to fancy steakhouses anymore, except like for special occasions or whatever it is. So yeah, that it definitely took a toll. And then the other thing is, especially during COVID as well, like working remotely and stuff like that. You're not working in like an office environment with a bunch of other people, in someone else's company, or like getting a job in that regard. You're basically working for yourself in your own home, and 9 to 5 is really up to you. And this could go one of two ways. You could end up like wasting so much time, or you can end up overworking so much and it feeds into the weekend and stuff like that.
I know,
yeah, man. So think of it as like, having a car that was like running on autopilot for you for some time, and now you have to learn how to drive manually on the highway, like in real time right now. Go learn, so that's it. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, it's really powerful that you say that, man, because like you start to think of like once you start your own business and you start making expenses that don't necessarily give you money back immediately, or even give you money back in a month, you start to, you're more conscious. First thing, you're more conscious about the money going out. It was until I started my entrepreneurship journey where I had an Excel sheet where I would calculate my expenses, and this happened like 2 years ago. So I mean, yeah, it does make you a lot more conscious about especially finances as well. Like, I mean,
100%.
yeah. Wow, cool. So Kareem, this is a general question I usually ask people I bring on the show. Like, what does entrepreneurship mean to you?
Oh man.
So, take a second and think about it as well if you want to.
Yeah, for sure. Let me see. you know, entrepreneurship is basically floating in the middle of the Pacific Ocean on a plank of wood and hoping to gather more wood in the middle of the ocean or something to help you build a ship to get to a destination, whether that's, you know,
Wow.
the US or Europe or somewhere else.
Wow.
You know, I learned firsthand, man, like it is not as glamorous as people think whatsoever. And you probably know what I'm talking about.
Mm.
You know, it's 0.5%, you know, glamour, and then 99.5%, you know what, deal with it. Deal with it, and you deserve it. You don't like it, deal with it. I'm just telling you what it's like, you know. You know, as opposed to me saying, "Oh, you
Oh
know,
my God.
you know, yeah." So that's it.
I like that. I like the analogy there. Thank you for that. So
You know,
okay. I remember when I asked you about your the major challenges you face. I know you talked about rejections, and
yeah,
you talked about how the yes and no were better than a maybe. I've never heard that before. That's really powerful. And but how did you manage the no's? Because you said the no's for you were now like research. You know, you had to find out what you were doing wrongly. But first of all, you know, as a normal person, be like, oh, they hate me, they hate my business, they hate my service or stuff like that. How did you go from that transition to
yeah.
okay, to this is actually research for me?
Toby, man, I love your questions because it gets me to think as well, like all these things that I've never really thought about before.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're absolutely right. So first of all, the whole like, you know, yes or no, no is better than a maybe. This
Mm,
just comes from a lot of like sales literature and like salesman literature, like, you know, a bunch of blogs and books. They always talk about you almost want to drive your goals to get to a no. A no is so much better than a maybe because
mm,
at least you can stop wasting your time. There's, I don't know how many billion people in the world. There's always going to be another opportunity. Some people say no stands for next opportunity, you know.
mm,
What I've learned, you know, and indirectly through others as well, other like operators that I've been watching, but I realized that, you know, that no could actually have a lot of meanings. And you, very practically, what that means is no could be no forever. Okay, no now and in the future and forever. No
mm,
forever. It could also be no right now, but actually next month this could be interesting or could be really good,
mm,
or maybe in a couple of months that could be really good. You know, so or no because of another condition, and
mm,
this condition, if we meet it, it's going to be a yes. And like we've been
mm,
meeting, like anyone listening to this and you and I, like we've been meeting conditions all day long. If you
mm,
attended primary school, you've been meeting conditions. Finish your homework or you don't get a sticker or whatever, you know. So it's all about meeting those conditions.
mm,
You know, oh, because the price is too high. Okay, well, let's talk about that. Oh,
mm,
it's because so and so feature is not there. Okay, well, that's something that's coming soon. If we build that, is that something that
mm,
will solve that problem for you?
mm,
And it's the same thing for yeses as well. I suppose it's a very like stoic approach where you don't get too excited, you don't get too upset. So even the yeses, like a yes could be yes in the future.
mm,
That's not great, but it is because you can just plan for it and you can have forecasting and things like that. You
mm,
can have a yes now, you could have a yes next month, you can have a yes next year, right? So we just realized that it's not just yes or no.
mm,
There's many different types of yeses. Yes next month, okay, let me put it in my calendar, I'll follow up with you next month.
mm,
Or no right now, but maybe next month could be good, which is the same thing as saying yes next month, right?
mm, mm,
You can put that in your diary and follow up then as well. But maybe that's the worst because you're like, so which one is it? Many times when I hear maybe, I try and get them to say no, because then I feel better about it. It's like, so it's not really like, sometimes I'm like, I'm not convinced that
mm,
this is for you, and they're like, no, 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 this is this, but blah blah blah, you know. So
mm.
there's it's always good to go to a yes or no. And sorry, you asked another question, but I'm not sure if I remember
Oh,
it.
I was just asking how you manage that transition mentally from understanding that it was not about you, but it was about maybe you know, price or something or a feature, like you said. Like, was it a long time before you knew that? Is it something that you had to learn the hard way or from someone?
Absolutely, man. Like you would go on, um, you know, especially if it happens on like a Friday night and then the whole weekend you're thinking about it. You're like, what's wrong with me? You know, and stuff like that. Like that still happens. I'm trying to get better at it. I haven't conquered it, but once again, I'm definitely a lot better than like a couple of months ago.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I think you just start to look at it objectively, and you realize that if you were in their position, for example, in our case, we're selling to companies, right? And there's so much dynamics, as you know, like anyone who's worked in a company knows that there's so many different dynamics, politics, things like that. You know, they may not want to bring something to their boss because their boss is like super under pressure. But rather than explaining that to us, they just say no. You know, so sometimes people project certain things based on, like, you don't know the reason behind someone says no, and that's why I always try and figure out what the reason is to
What
see if
that
it's something
reason?
that's within our control or outside of our control. And ultimately, like, you know, it's always about like objective thing, and we always try and look at it. We always try and, this is something that we started to do like pretty well, I have to say, but to just like start to slowly de-associate ourselves from the business. Like the business just becomes a separate thing, and you're sort of like zoomed out from it, and you're just observing that thing. Like,
I
think of it as like a
see.
chessboard. If you're playing chess and one of your pieces gets knocked out, you didn't, like, I didn't get knocked out, you know, like it's the piece, it's the army. Let
I
me objectively
see.
think about how I could play the next piece.
Wow,
So you
wow,
think
wow.
of it like
Where do you
that.
come up with these analogies, man? Jesus Christ. You should just have a book on an
Yeah,
I like the
I'll
way you
slap an
say it that
analogy.
way. That is sick.
Yeah,
Wow.
you know, but many times we feel like we are the chess piece, when in fact
Yeah, yeah,
you are the horse, or
exactly.
you're the whatever. You're not,
Yeah.
you know. They work for you. Yeah.
Wow, cool. Wow. Before we dive, because I want to talk about a little bit, I want to talk a little bit about what you do. Before we dive into that, I want to talk slightly on personal development.
Yeah.
As an entrepreneur, that is one thing that is key. That's what I find. You have to have like books that motivate you, probably mentors that you listen to. I know one of your big guys, Gary Vee.
Yeah, he's great. Yeah.
So tell me how, or like what books have you been reading? Like, what's your favorite book? Talk to me about your mentors, the guys that you look up to. You've already mentioned one book earlier. I'm going to actually put a link, and I'm probably
Who
sure it's
not how?
screen of that
Yeah.
book. Yeah, later on. So, can you talk to me about some of your personal mentors, or have you had any mentors at all? And what books have you been reading that have actually helped you shape yourself to the person you are today?
Yeah, for sure, man. So here's the thing. Like, I don't think we always have access to the mentors that could most help us right away, or sometimes we just don't see who they are, even though they're right there. But in my case, my kind of like shortcut, or the conclusion I arrived at is, you know what if these book authors could be my mentors, and I just buy their book and watch their videos, and I learn from them, even though I didn't meet them, or I may never meet them. So, which is crazy because you feel like you know them so well. So yeah, I would definitely think of them as mentors. So yeah, man, like for me, it's all about books. Like I read, yeah, like I read like obsessively, you know, and I also listen to like audiobooks and stuff like that. Sometimes I listen a lot of times I listen to, yeah, like self-development, like podcasts and things like that as well. I think for me, it's pretty much a mix of self-development and like mental toughness stuff, the same stuff that like maybe even athletes would listen to and things like that. And then a lot of other stuff is more like strategic and tactical and management related and stuff like that, if that makes sense.
So for let's start with the mental toughness bit. Like, who are your top three or the go-to books that you have read so far that have actually helped you
Okay.
with mental
by
toughness?
by far uncontested is The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday. So he has an insane book. It's a couple of years old now, but actually he made a new one called The Lives of the Stoics, I think, something like that, that I still need to check out. But yeah, The Obstacle is the Way is like a timeless book. It talks to you about how you could. So are you familiar with Stoicism in general?
No, I'm not familiar with that at all.
Okay, I'm not going to attempt to define it because I'm probably going to butcher the definition. But long story short, it talks about like a way of thinking where you're not like super happy when something great happens. And more importantly, you're not super upset like when something bad happens. You're kind of like living your life like in the middle kind of thing, and to see things objectively as such. So to see things objectively and to make sure that you can not cast judgment on them. So like an example could be, this is a funny example, but maybe it'll drive the point home. Like if I was walking and I spilled some milk on the floor, we are so quick to cast judgment, like, oh man, now I have to clean that, like I made a mess. Okay, I already cast a judgment, didn't even keep in mind the event was that the milk got spilled. That's just an objective event. I could have also thought about it, you know what, like this is the perfect motivation for me to clean up the house. I've been meaning to do this for weeks now. Let me just get on with it. So the same thing could be could be viewed in different ways. So yeah, like The Obstacle is the Way is a great book because it talks about how obstacles can actually not only help you to get to where you are, but thanks to the obstacle, you're able to get there. And if there was no obstacle, you would have not been able to get there. And it's thanks to the obstacle you have found the way that you're trying to go. So it's an amazing book. Another one would be, let me think. I think Relentless by Tim Grover.
Okay.
And he is the mental coach of Michael Jordan and a bunch of other people. And he talks about some amazing like concepts in his book as well around how to just crush anything that's in your sight, and to adopt a mentality that no matter what, come hell or high water, like you're going to be able to achieve this. And he talks in specific about how you can actually go about doing that, and how you could actually again, not to butcher the book or to go into too much detail, but yeah, it's just an incredible book that talks about a lot of these concepts, and also the concept of what he calls in the book a cleaner, like someone who comes in and just he just does a clean job of just like getting everything done. And it's not the first person you call to get a job done. It's actually the last person you call after everyone else has failed. And you call this guy, and he talks about how someone like Michael Jordan was a cleaner. Like you call him to like finish the show.
And that's what it was. That's really what he was.
Yeah. So that's one. And then last but not least is a great book by David Goggins called "Can't Hurt Me."
Oh, I have that book.
You have that one?
Yeah, I have that book. That is a sick book. Wow.
Sick book.
That is what he called mental toughness. That's sick. Yeah. But I'm definitely going to check out the other books that you've mentioned. So do you have mentors that you look up to?
I think the ones that I do look up to, it's so funny, man. I was actually thinking about this the other day, and they're all people that I've never really met before. And they're not all of them are in business either, like they're just in different areas of life in general. But are you asking about a specific type of mentor?
No, just like for me, like if I were to talk about mentors that I look up to, one would be someone like Bob Proctor. He talks about paradigms and how we all have our different paradigms that are defined by the habits that we have. So that would be one of them. Another one would be Gary Vee. I think Gary Vee, his content is sick. He's always relevant. He was the one that made me know that LinkedIn started stories. Like LinkedIn started stories. I didn't know about that until I went to LinkedIn and I saw a circle on the top. I was like, what's that? Then it was Gary Vee talking on LinkedIn stories. So he's always on top of things. And another mentor of mine would be let me just think. I can't really think of one right now. I want to say Tony Robbins, but he's more of a motivational figure for me. I think it would be Jim Rohn and Les Brown. Those guys kill it for me. Yeah, those guys.
Les Brown is great. Excuse me. I'd add Eric Thomas to that list as well.
Eric Thomas is another guy. He's an amazing player. Amazing figure. Sorry.
Yeah, but man, I think for me, like it's funny because like for me, I just think of them as the book authors or the people that I follow. Like for example, like you and I, for example, love Tom Bilyeu. He has a great like platform in general.
Yeah, I love his platform.
His personal story is insane, but also just the people that he speaks with. When he brought like Les Brown on his show, or when he brought,
I saw that. That was a powerful show with Les Brown. I was almost teary when he was talking. Yeah, he's I really love what Tom Billio does, and I think he really, the people he brings on his show, they really have a great story to share with the world, and I think it's really powerful because stories are actually what sell to me, to be honest.
Yeah, that's what convinces you. Yeah,
Yeah, the last bit I wanted to delve into now was about what you do as per what you do as a business.
hmm
So like what is it that you do, and how is it that how do you help people? Are you like a business to a customer? Is it a business to business or B2C? What is it that you do?
yeah. So basically, with Tribetactics, what we do, it's a B2B company, and
Mhm.
we can help turn an hour of your time into a full month of content. It's as
Wow.
simple as that. Now, the way we do that is we work with companies that have video content,
Mm,
and we tell them, you know what, did you know that this video content contains literally tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars for your business? And they're like, huh, what do you mean?
mm,
And we say, these webinars, these long video podcasts, all these long videos that you guys have, if you send it to us, we
mm,
can chop it up for you. We give you a
mm,
platform where you can chop up this content into tons of additional content pieces across like video, but also audio. So
mm,
like creating like, video like snippets with subtitles similar to Gary Vee
mm.
on LinkedIn and other channels, creating audio podcasts from your videos, creating all these nice like image quotes from your videos, even
Mm,
creating articles based on your videos. So essentially, really taking an hour of your time, your team's time, and turning that into a month of content. Think
mm,
of all the people who could put the potential customers who could see this content. And if it wasn't for that perfect clip, they would have never talked to your sales team.
mm,
And we have many stories of that. So that's basically what we do, and we do that as a service. So we have a team that could do that for you. Essentially,
mm,
becomes your content team for hire, and we only do this repurposing thing. On the other side, we also have an AI platform that we've recently created called Chopcast, which
mm,
does the same idea, but from a SaaS perspective, where you
mm.
can basically log into the platform and it's free to start. But you basically log in and you can instantly chop up your videos by searching keywords or topics.
Mm.
So
I saw
overall,
that.
like our vision is to try and help people get a lot more out of their content.
Mm.
And when people tell us, "Oh, what's the best way to do that?" we say, "Do what Toby's doing: start a video series." Because
Now,
ultimately people want to binge watch shows and
yeah,
stuff like that,
yeah.
and we're very passionate about show creation. Yeah.
Mm. Now, guys, I want to just say something that I omitted at the start of this series. This guy here, this gentleman here, is also an author, man. This is his book here called The Original Series. And to be honest, I have been reading this thing like religiously because it really applies to what I'm doing right now. Okay. And bro, first of all, congratulations. This is
Thank you
amazing.
so much, man.
And as an entrepreneur, it didn't take you too long before you wrote the book. You wrote this book in like how, when did you start and how long did it take you, first of all?
Yeah, so it's all thanks to a friend of mine, a really good friend of mine, called Iliana
Mm,
Stareva.
mm,
And she basically used to be my colleague in HubSpot. She's now in a different company, but basically she wrote a book about 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 something about inbound PR, basically a
mm,
different topic inside marketing. And everyone was like, "Yo, like, how did you do it? You're literally working full time and you wrote a book."
mm,
And everyone kept like pestering her these questions. And she's like, "You know what, guys, I'm going to give you guys a workshop on how I
mm,
wrote my book in 3 months." So she did that workshop, and I was in the audience, and I was just like listening to how she went about it. It
mm.
took me about maybe 4 months and a half or something like that.
4 months to make
But
this.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Wow.
And basically like yeah, that's how it got started. Also because like this concept of like building shows and stuff like that, it's a
Mm,
very like Hollywood thing, it's a very television thing. No
mm,
one talks about building shows for companies. At least
mm,
there's no book on it that I was aware of at the time. And so we thought, you know what, let's borrow a phrase, that people would know, like original series, like a
mm,
Netflix original series or
mm,
a Hulu original series. Let's try and talk to businesses about how they can create their own original series as well.
mm.
So yeah, that's where the idea came from.
I want to just say that this book here, it's really been like it starts like with all the fundamentals. Like you have to you go into great detail in explaining every single aspect of content. Even going back to where it started, and then you come into the episode series. You know, That was what really caught my attention. I mean, creating episodes series as opposed to just creating just normal content. Can you just talk to me why you feel that episode series is the way forward when it comes to content?
Yeah, so we can use the entrepreneur's dilemma as the perfect example, man.
Okay.
Imagine if you were just creating random blog posts, or just posting something on social media whenever you feel like it or whenever you get an idea. That's assuming that you keep getting fresh ideas as well, which is a lot of unnecessary pressure that you're putting on yourself. And the success of the business rides on whether you get your inspiration one day or not.
Yeah.
Like all this additional pressure, not to mention the time that it takes to create all this fragmented content. We try and simplify it a lot more by saying, you know what, there's a lot of companies and individuals out there who are taking a Netflix approach to creating content. And they don't do any thinking at all. I mean that in a good way. They don't trouble themselves at all. All they need to do is come up with a concept for a show. And then every time they want a new piece of content, they just create a new episode. And then people say, well, okay, but that's video, but what about written content and SEO and all this extra stuff? You can easily take each video post, because video is such a rich format, like the recording that we're doing today. It's such a rich format that you can easily find ways to get like more content from it. You can take this video and repurpose it. And we repurpose stuff in our lives like all the time. A piece of furniture that doesn't work anymore, you can fix it, make it something else. You make chicken on Monday, you can make chicken soup on Tuesday. Like we do this in all again with the chicken. You can use it in so many aspects of your life. So why don't we think about it from a content perspective? And last but not least, Toby, is that it just has this level of prestige, or this level of like nice like branding, like, yo, we have a show. A company has a show, and it makes it so entertaining and educational for the people to just tune in and binge watch content, as opposed to mindlessly watching other stuff, if that makes sense.
So throughout your book here, there's a phrase that keeps coming up that I had to actually go into Google to actually search, and it's the phrase thought leadership. It's something that you actually define in your book, but I want you to like throw some more light on that. Why should brands, really be aware of thought leadership? That's one. And two, is it important for entrepreneurs to be aware of what this is?
Yeah, absolutely. So put simply, like, thought leadership is about building your own brand and body of work. Let me say this another way. If you wanted to do something, you might as well be the best at it, right? And an easy way to become the best at something is to actually find a specific niche that you will be able to speak to as good as anyone else, or ideally even better than them. So rather than saying I want to be a thought leader, and a point of authority, let's say in marketing, that's way too general. Why don't you find a specific niche or branch within that? It could be a local niche, so like you being the best at it in your neighborhood, in your city, in your country, language, or it could be a specific like industry, like, okay, I do this but for e-commerce specifically, or for course creators in Arabic specifically. Like you could be as specific as you want, and you can build your thought leadership in that. You build your thought leadership by basically being prolific in the content that you put out there. So by being the most person to create value in that space. So creating videos, creating articles, creating additional content, creating products and services that suit that. And so eventually people learn to just automatically come to you because you're a thought leader, not in everything, but in the specific thing that they need help with. And we do that all the time. Like when we're looking for, when we're thinking of buying something from Amazon, for example, sometimes we go on YouTube and we see what people have to say. And if I'm trying to review, if I want to buy like a gimbal, for a camera, I'm more likely to gravitate towards someone who has an entire channel purely on gimbal reviews, for example, as opposed to videography in general, maybe gimbal reviews specifically. And yeah, it's important for entrepreneurs to do it because entrepreneurs are creating jobs for themselves and for others. And in order to do that, and it's very, very tough going at the start, as we've explained, it's important that you're always striving to become the best in your field. That's how you attract more talent towards you, more customers towards you, and that's how you just feel like more self-fulfilled, that you're not just another person doing the same thing at a cheaper price, but rather that you're adding new value there, and through that you're becoming a thought leader in the space.
Wow, well said, well said.
And Toby, one last thing I'll just say quickly on this point.
Yeah.
There's a guy called Daniel Priestley who wrote an amazing book called Key Person of Influence. It's a super quick read, and he talks about exactly how you can build this thought leadership. And one of the things he talked about is see if you can write a book, and that's actually how I ended up doing my book. You know, so it's an amazing book. Definitely had an impact on me for sure.
I actually thought, because earlier on the show you did say your mom writes books. That's why I thought you got the inspiration to write books.
as well. She, yeah, no, 100%. But she writes fiction though.
Okay.
Yeah,
Wow.
I write nonfiction. So yeah.
Cool. Coming to my next question. Can you share some mistakes that you've made in this business? Maybe a few mistakes that you can share, anyways.
Yeah.
Like in your business, in your company.
Yeah. So we have hundreds. So would you like to pick a category? There's a lot, man.
Okay. Just start with the ones that really hurt you really bad.
Oh man. Okay, cool. That's no problem. I think so sorry, mistakes. Yeah. Mistakes. I think one of the things, and I sorry to repeat myself, but it really comes back to something that we've done before, which I talked about before. I mean, which is this notion of always insisting to learn how to do everything yourself. And again, like I'm actually looking at it right now, but the book with Dan Sullivan, Who Not How, he talks about how, like, even in school, you're taught not that if you collaborate with somebody else, you're cheating. Finish your own homework. Don't collaborate with somebody else. You know, like, finish your own work, finish your own project, write your own essay. In college, it's the same thing. In your job, it's the same thing. It's like, hey, I didn't hire you to go to your colleagues or something. Like, get your own work done. Now, so it makes sense. Like, like, you hired me, this is my job, I need to learn how to do it. That's how I add value. But we realize that it's a very limiting belief in entrepreneurship for sure, because you really, really must always ask who can help me do something. And you try and it's not just delegating, because delegating means you teach someone how to do something. Who is like, hey, Toby, like, I don't even know how to do this. I know what the end goal is, so I cannot even explain to you how to do it. But I will just share with you the end goal, and you can take us there with your years of experience as such. So it's not delegating. Delegating is like, hey, Toby, here's how to do so and so, step 1, step 2, step 3. Can you do that 100 times? That's like delegating and process and stuff. A who is finding someone to build that process and to execute it to the end. That was one of the biggest mistakes we had, which is thinking that we are all that and that we know everything in-house, and that we should only bring other people when we have figured out the process to teach them. And this is a very, like, delicate point, man, because sometimes people think, no, of course I'm going to hire people, but when I figure out the process, then I'm going to teach it to them, you know? Now you're wasting time learning how to do something that's not even native to you, and then you're going to teach them, and naturally there's going to be a learning curve. That's why companies have a whole 6-month probation, not a 5-hour probation. It's a 6-month probation. You know, so that was one of the things, definitely, that was a mistake that we've since corrected.
Okay, cool. And is there any other ones that come to mind?
I think so. That's one, and then the other one is recognizing that, you know, and again, this is like one of those, like, sometimes like corporate mentality things, or like individual things that you should really change your mind about when you're thinking in business mode. But like learning to invest more sooner, if that makes sense. For example, many times we would say, you know what, we don't want to touch anything, we don't want to spend any more money because you never know what's going to happen. Well, if we keep thinking like that, the inevitable, you know, bad case scenario is going to happen. You know, but if you actually take and you know, money depreciates anyway, so you're better off investing that to create a lot more value. So sometimes we used to think of it as like, oh yeah, it's nice to see that number there as a level of security, but it's not really helping anything. You know, like anyone who does investing would understand, like, if it's just sitting there, you're essentially losing it. Yeah, it feels nice for like 10 seconds, but we've since redefined our understanding of this, where it's like, the less, not, you know, take this with a pinch of salt, but the less we have it means the more damage we're doing, the more, you know, activity we're doing, the more we're investing, which is good. Because if you have like just a bunch of cash or whatever, like just sitting there, then it's pretty useless. Like, what was the point of making it in the first place? You know. So yeah.
Cool. Kareem, as we are coming towards the end of the show, I just want to ask another question, and it's probably the last two questions I will ask.
Sure.
One is, what would you tell your 17-year-old self?
Oh man. What, in general, you mean?
Yeah, in general, like based on the life lessons that you've learned, you know, because now that you've started, you've become an entrepreneur, there's definitely a lot of responsibility in your head. You're a married man as well, and you know, you've learned so much in business, you know. But like at 17, if you think back to when you were 17, when you were very ambitious, you know, I don't know where you were, but what would you tell yourself that would probably put you in a better position that you'd have envisioned for yourself today?
This sounds very dark, but to put myself in positions where I can face more rejections, just so I can become more familiar with it, like earlier on. Naturally, when you go into entrepreneurship, you realize that the name of the game is rejection. The exception is something works out. This is not a bad thing.
Man, the exception is that something works out.
Yeah. Look,
but the truth is that you only need that exception to work out once or twice, you know?
Exactly. And man, like, you know me, and like anyone who knows me like would know that I'm a super positive, optimistic guy. I'm always joking and whatever. So I'm just being objective. I'm not being negative when I say that most of the time it doesn't work out. The exception is when it works out. Here's the last part that I left out, which is that when it works out, that's all you need. All you need is, you know, like for example, if you, I'm gonna think of like a quick example just to drive the point home. But let's
just
say,
stay away from chicken, man.
Yeah, stay away from you know, let's say you want to get to a stage where you have a business that's making 10K a month on a subscription, like 10K a month recurring. Okay, you can think, oh my God, that's the end of the world. That's just so difficult or whatever. But in a weird way, if you think about it, it's only, let's say, 1,000 people who would pay you 10 a month, every month. That's one way to do it. Or 100 people. I hope my math is right now. Or like, you know, so that I'm gonna stick with that example so I don't embarrass myself. But yeah,
No, you're right.
Who pay you 10 a month. That's essentially what it is. And so even if the whole world says no to you, as long as you have 1,000 people who say yes, you're happy out, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's basically it. And this was the thing that I would have taught myself, man, or that I would have wished I would have gotten more exposure to. I think all of us growing up, it's all about, it's an overemphasis on like seeing success all the time, and de-emphasis and almost brushing it off like failure or rejection. Especially our parents as well. Like, you know, they're always like well-meaning and stuff like that, but there was never really a focus on like embracing like failure and recognizing that it is part of the game, as cliche as it sounds. And as an entrepreneur, you learn to seek those moments because you know that every time you get a no, it actually helps you to learn a bit better. That's like we discussed earlier.
Okay. Wow. Well, Kareem, you've been amazing on this show. I want to thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you, man, for the opportunity.
Dropped
I really
an
appreciate
insane amount of knowledge here, and I really appreciate you. I really appreciate you coming down. And guys, this book is on Amazon. I'm gonna put a link in the description below. If you're thinking about if you create content in any way, it's definitely a must read. I've been reading it. I've been taking it everywhere I go. I went to IKEA shop. I was on the queue. I was literally having this book. I won't lie to you. And on the bus, when anytime I'm moving, I'm just reading it because it's something I find that I might have to go back to many times, especially with even this the Entrepreneur's Dilemma show. But Kareem, thank you so much. Is there any way people can reach you? Like, do you have a LinkedIn? What's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
Yeah, first of all, man, thank you for having me and for having these conversations in general, because I think it's like if I had a resource like this earlier on, I think it would have definitely like helped me like learn a lot of things and learn what not to do in many ways. So thank you for the work that you do, bro. Yeah, basically, yeah, man. I mean, yeah, I can send you a link to like my LinkedIn profile. And if people have any questions, more than happy to connect and see if I can help out or connect them with somebody that I know in that regard.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much, Kareem. It was a pleasure, and I hope we catch up sometime when this thing dies off, this
For
COVID
sure, man.
dies off, and then we can get some chicken.
Okay, I'm gonna hold you accountable to it now.
No problem at all. But thank you so
All right,
much.
man.
All right, take care of yourself
Thank you,
now.
man.
All the best.
Talk to you soon.
Bye.